President Xi and I are announcing that Canada and China are forging a new strategic partnership.
It's no secret that I've been a little bit underwhelmed by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney up to this point, but this agreement with China, I gotta say, I think is clearly the greatest thing that he has done so far as Prime Minister. So in this video, I'm gonna break down what this deal is. I'm going to discuss some of the criticisms, specifically of the EV stuff, but I'll also get to the reaction from Pierre Poilievre, some conservatives, as well as Donald Trump, which you may find a little bit surprising, but is also a mixed message coming from him versus his government. And also all goes to exactly why this agreement with China was so necessary. But let me start with just a couple of clips here from their initial meeting, and then we'll get into details.
This is your first visit to China as Prime Minister, and the first visit to China by a Canadian Prime Minister in more than 8 years. A healthy and stable China-Canada relationship serves the common interest of our two countries. It is also good for the peace, stability, and prosperity of the world.
The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Oh my God, the new world order. Yes, as you can imagine, some people on the right have lost their goddamn minds over that line. The new world order. Oh, no. Sounds nefarious. I remember Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and WCW when they started the NWO. It was bad. Like, all he's talking about is the fact that Trump has clearly disrupted how things were. And these sorts of partnerships, like with China, is a way to move forward. But no, you got the National Post headline here. Mark Carney embraces Chinese EVs and the New World Order. Liberals use Beijing trip to trash the United States, which is so hilarious when you remember that the National Post is American owned and you remember what they are here for, to defend U.S. interests. I mean, you had literally the same day of the meeting, the Trump White House on Fox News saying there's going to be some look at the new world order that President Trump is creating. I don't expect to see a National Post headline about that, though. But you will get this from the Toronto Sun, another post-media run paper. Canada should want U.S. in Greenland to safeguard our Arctic. Like, I just got, just as an aside here, if you read any of these things here, any of these papers, National Post, Ottawa Citizen, Calgary Herald, Toronto Sun, read the rest. Keep in mind, these are American-owned companies. I'm not saying everything that comes out of these places is all for the interest of America, but especially when it comes to like op-eds like this, come on. Like 20 years ago, the idea of Canada defending the US taking over Greenland, any paper doing that, far right or not, would have been insane. But now it's a normal occurrence because they simply move in lockstep with Donald Trump. Anyways, putting all that aside, I want to get to the details of this deal here. So actually, before I even dive into it, it's worth acknowledging, the general criticism of working with China is that, human rights violations, which I don't know if you looked at the US recently, but have you seen what ICE has been doing? And that's just domestically, let alone the one thing China doesn't do, bomb random foreign countries and steal their resources, which has already happened this year, let alone many times before this year. But with Venezuela, like the stated goal is to steal their oil. I'm not seeing China do that. So yes, there are human rights abuses or violations, just like there are in many other countries that we also work with, that shouldn't preclude us from working with them. And I would also argue that isolating us from those countries doesn't help to address those issues either. I would say partnering with them, if anything, would likely help to at least have a larger discussion about what is going on in these other countries that we are working with, and maybe shed some more light on how to address that. Isolation is not the solution here. Diplomacy is. But on Mark Carney's comments about that. So he made clear Ottawa does not agree with Beijing on everything, adding that in his discussions with Xi, he made clear Canada's red lines, including human rights, concerns over election interference, and the need for guardrails. Quote, we take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. He said that when asked about China's human rights record. Observers believe Carney's visit could set an example for other countries across the world who are also feeling the pain from Washington's tariffs. Now I want to get to Carney discussing the 5 key areas of this partnership with China.
So leveraging our strengths and focusing on areas of alignment, Canada and China can create greater stability, security, and prosperity for both our nations. And to that end, President Xi and I are announcing that Canada and China are forging a new strategic partnership. It will focus on 5 key areas where both our nations stand to make substantial and sustained gains. The first is in clean energy and climate competitiveness, areas where Canada and China have immense strengths and complementary strengths. Second, we're expanding trade, particularly in agriculture and food, where Canada is a reliable partner. Third, our commitment to multilateralism and strengthening global governance comes at a time when all of this is in flux. Fourth, we're deepening engagement in public safety and security to protect our peoples. And finally, people-to-people ties and culture are being enhanced to enrich our lives.
All right, so there's a lot of, vague language there. That's just kind of his opening discussion of what the partnership is. I will show you some specifics, though, because this stuff does actually impact Canadians in a positive way. First, obvious one being, Canadians will soon be exempt from visa requirements to travel to China. This is fantastic. 45 other countries can go to China without any sort of visa requirements, including, European countries. There's no reason why this should be in place. So allowing this more of a cultural partnership here, allowing the free flow of people just to travel and understand China better, I think is fantastic. Some of the other clear examples of what came out of this agreement is Carney said Ottawa expects Beijing to drop canola seed duties to 15% by March and called that enormous progress. It was at 85%, so this is a massive benefit, especially for Saskatchewan. The Premier Scott Moe here, who worth acknowledging is conservative, writes here, today's trade deal to significantly reduce Chinese tariffs on canola and other Canadian products is very good news for Canada and Saskatchewan. This deal is a very positive signal that will restore existing trade volumes and open avenues for further opportunities for Canadians. So while some premiers, like Doug Ford, which we will get to shortly, are criticizing the deal with China, Scott Moe is praising it. Worth acknowledging as well, Canadian canola meal, lobsters, crabs, and peas will no longer be subject to Chinese anti-discrimination tariffs from March to at least the end of the year. There was no mention of canola oil. In return, Canada, which imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles in 2024, will allow up to 49,000 Chinese EVs into the Canadian market each year at a 6.1% tariff, which is the standard tariff for partnership for countries that Canada partners with. So this is, again, fantastic. I'll get more into the EV stuff. Here is Doug Ford's reaction, though. Of course, Premier of Ontario saying, make no mistake, China now has a foothold in the Canadian market and will use it to their full advantage at the expense of Canadian workers. The federal government is inviting a flood of cheap. Okay, before I go, what way does he mean cheap? Cheap as in inexpensive? Yes. Cheap as in cheaply made? No. China's EVs are the best in the world by far. And I'm going to point you to a video in a minute here of a breakdown of that. But he writes, the government is inviting a flood of cheap made in China electric vehicles without any real guarantee of equal or immediate investments in Canada's economy, auto sector, or supply chain. Worse, by lowering tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, this lopsided deal risks closing the door on Canadian automakers to the American market, our largest export destination, which would hurt our economy and lead to job losses. The idea that this would close Canada off to America has everything to do with Trump and nothing to do with Mark Carney. We've seen that again and again. I mean, my major criticism of Carney up to this point has been he's been giving Trump way too much. Everything Trump's asked for, he's given him, and there has been nothing to come of it. So the idea that this is going to hurt Trump's feelings, we'll get to Trump, his reaction later. But this idea that this is going to be what's going to destroy any kind of deal, it is absurd. We know that based on how unpredictable and ridiculous Donald Trump is. So I think this is silly. We'll get to Mark Carney's reaction to the criticisms of the EV deal. But I also want to share this from Paris Marx here, writing, I never hear the same hand-wringing about Tesla importing cars into Canada when it's clear it has no intention of ever producing them here. So he writes, as the deal allows for 49,000 Chinese EVs into Canada each year. For perspective, Tesla sold 55,000 vehicles in Canada in 2024, but less than 20,000 in 2025. And Teslas are not built here. And by the way, this potentially, as we'll get to Carney's reaction, does open up Canada to potentially building for these or producing for these Chinese EVs. So Unifor, which Union, their opinion I take in a more serious way than Doug Ford, but they write here, opening door to Chinese EVs risks future of Canada's auto sector. So their argument includes Unifor has long warned about the risks of letting Chinese EVs flood the North American market. If left unchecked, it would cost Canadian jobs, stall domestic investment, and drive more imports from low-cost jurisdictions. With virtually no Canadian content in Chinese vehicles, our independent auto parts supply chain would also be hard hit. I think this rings hollow when, of course, up to this point, there have not been any Canadian content in Chinese vehicles because we have a 100% tariff on them. Why would there be parts made here for Chinese vehicles? This is the beginning of an agreement that potentially opens us up for more to happen. Now, again, yes, potentially, there's no guarantee there, but this is how these sorts of agreements start. You don't get everything all at once. But I at the same time, I understand their concern at the potential impact on Canadian jobs. Here is Mark Carney reacting to the criticisms.
It's expected that within 3 years, this agreement will drive considerable Chinese investment in Canada's auto sector, creating good careers in Canada and accelerating our progress towards a net zero future and the auto industry of the future. With this agreement, it's also anticipated that within 5 years, more than 50% of these vehicles will be affordable EVs with an import price of less than $35,000. Let's put this in context. 49,000 vehicles, which is the cap on Chinese electric vehicle exports to Canada, that's part of this agreement. That's a return to levels last seen in 2023, the last full year before the Canadian tariff actions. That's the first point. Second point, again, to put it in, dimension it, that's less than 3% of the size of the Canadian auto market. The third point, to put in context, and I reference this, is that part of this agreement, and it takes a few years to build this, a couple of years to build this, that an increasing portion of those exports will be in a new segment of the Canadian market. In other words, electric vehicles that cost less than $35,000 at the landed price. So there's a huge opportunity here to get more affordable cars in the electric vehicle market for Canada. The fourth element, and in many respects the most important element, is the beginning of discussions and expectation of Chinese investment in Canada and partnership in Canada to produce vehicles over time, so to partner with Canadian firms.
So while I get some of the criticisms, especially from unions, I think Mark Carney makes a good case here, that this is the beginning of a potential future partnership with China and what that could mean for new manufacturing jobs within Canada. I want to share this as well. I'll link this below the video in case you haven't seen it. This is 9 million views. But Marcus Brownlee has just a great breakdown of a Chinese EV here. This is the, I think it's a Xiaomi electric car. It is insane how advanced their EVs are and the cost of them, half the cost of what you would expect for something similar. So it really is, I mean, they're far out and ahead. And this is part of the worry that other car manufacturers, speaking of American manufacturers mostly, have had with Chinese EVs getting into the market, is that it really showcases how behind everybody else is. Now, just a few things to go over here near the end of this video, and that is the reaction to this from other party leaders. Don Davies, the interim NDP leader, with a comment here saying the Canada-China agreement is a step forward, good for Canadian farmers, fishers, forestry, consumers, the environment, and important for diversifying trade. NDP will continue to press for Chinese EVs to be built in Canada. Access to our auto market should create Canadian jobs. It is so refreshing to see a party leader not just go into automatic criticize everything mode like we see with Pierre Poilievre. Like, this is somebody who actually acknowledges that this is good. This should wake people up to realizing there is a better way to do politics that will make you more popular. It's good to see this. It's good to see just reality be acknowledged and not have to always be criticizing, even when there's no reason to criticize. Speaking of which, Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader. So this is the video that he posted. I'll share at least part of it, because the second part I already showed you.
I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
We're heartened.
And then he goes on to show the meeting with China. So look, yeah, back in April, Mark Carney criticized China. And now there's an agreement. Okay, so he's evolved. He has moved in the right direction. Why is this bad? You being opposed to politicians changing for good is everything wrong with politicians. There's a great article here from The Walrus. Poilievre bragged that he has never changed his mind. That's the problem. It is not good to be the same person you were when you were 17 years old, to have the same perspective. Life experience, knowledge should change your perspective, should change your mind, should move you in some way. The fact that it hasn't does not speak well of you. Like, it's absolutely incredible that people think never learning is is a plus, especially for a politician. It's insane. You want your politicians to be able to take in new knowledge and adjust based on that knowledge. So here's another conservative writing, nobody voted for a new world order. Again, the fear mongering is amazing. Mark Carney campaigned on a trade deal with the U.S. Instead, he flushed the relationship with our best customer down the toilet. Ah, yes. Mark Carney flushed it down the toilet. Look, as somebody, again, I've been critical of Mark Carney. The idea that this is on him and not Trump's not even acknowledged here. Doesn't even acknowledge his existence. Like, that is clearly the problem here. These sorts of comments are insane. The idea that people support politicians like this that just don't acknowledge reality is absurd. Another conservative MP. No tariffs on lobster, Carney says. Fine print is that it's only for 9 months. To get that, China gets to send 49,000 spy machine cars to Canada this year, rising over the next few years to 70,000. Some negotiator, I replied in a comment here. Hey, if China wants to psychoanalyze my Timmy's order, that's cool. I got some news for you. Everything is spying on us. The fact that I just said Timmy's right here into this microphone, I bet I'll open my phone later and there'll be an advertisement for Tim Hortons. This is how this shit works now. If you got a problem with that, so do I. It's weird that everything is listening all the time. But the way to deal with that is to deal with the companies that allow that to happen. Have some regulations. If you're afraid of that kind of thing, then yes, we should be able to regulate that in some way. We should be able to monitor what these companies are doing and how they are spying on us all the time. Just don't buy a Chinese EV. If you're really afraid of whatever you're saying in the car, like what are you doing in the car? I guess, you're a politician. Maybe there's got deals going on, discussions going on. You don't want to be heard. I get it. Don't buy a Chinese EV. That simple. You could apply the same sort of fear mongering around American-made cars. It's totally possible that an American-made vehicle that you buy is also spying on you for some reason. So just these sorts of fear mongering around China, when many other countries have problems and we still deal with them. It's just absurd to me. So James Wood, who is a British Australian who moved to China, again, keep that in mind when you're reading his opinion here, but I think he makes some good points. For years, Canada was told to treat China as a problem to be managed rather than a partner to engage. That advice didn't come from Ottawa, it came from Washington, and Canada paid the price for following it. He goes on to say, this is the part that rarely gets said out loud. Canada didn't pivot to China, it was pushed there by American behavior. Re-engaging with China is Canada acting like an adult in a multipolar world, diversifying trade, reducing vulnerability, repairing damage that was never in Canada's interest to begin with. And let's be honest about the moral posturing too. Canada trades with plenty of countries it disagrees with. So does the US. Values suddenly become a barrier only when China is involved, has always rung hollow. Absolutely. So it's just bizarre to me that this sort of partnership has the kinds of criticisms that it does when we partner with the US-run America. All right, a few last things here. Just the American paper reaction. Just want to show a couple headlines. Canada breaks with US to slash tariffs on some Chinese electric vehicles. So this is really being positioned as sort of a failure by Donald Trump, and I think that's fair to argue. This deal would not be happening if it weren't for Trump. I think that's very clear. Our foreign policy, our policy generally has had to shift because of what Trump has done. In the face of Trump's tariffs, Canada and China grow closer. Again, just a Washington Post headline. And op-ed as well. The world is adjusting to an unreliable U.S. Here is Trump's reaction, which may surprise you.
Prime Minister Carney is in China. How do you see the deals Canada and China have just signed, trade deals between the two partners?
Well, that's okay. That's what he should be doing. I mean, it's a good thing for him to sign a trade deal. If you can get a deal with China, you should do that.
If he can get a deal with China, he should do that. The reaction from Trump is hilarious because he doesn't appear to care, even though his own administration earlier in the day did appear to care. This from Al Jazeera, U.S. says Canada will regret decision to allow Chinese EVs into their market. So the quote here, I think they'll look back at this decision and surely regret it to bring Chinese cars into their market. That's from the U.S. Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy. Mixed messages. Like the reaction from Trump and his administration here, two very different things, goes to why this partnership with China is so important. Because China, I think it's fair to argue, is a lot more of a reliable partner than Donald Trump's America is. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and check out some of the other videos I have on this channel.